Okay, so welcome everyone, and I hope you are all having a beautiful day so far. As you might know, it's our early afternoon here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And for Bev, who's way over in Australia, it's her very early at 8 o'clock in the morning. So welcome, Bev, again. And today's topic, which just kept jumping out at me personally, really, was around love and loneliness. And, you know, we can be loved by our family and our friends and yet still feel quite empty and alone within. And we can, be very much with a lot, with a lot of people that really love us, and yet we can still feel alone. And that's sort of, I feel for me personally over the last 3 years, there was another sort of insurgence of this type of loneliness feeling, because the world was separated up very much so, and way more than what it had been, and how we'd sort of transitioned our way through life over life from, feeling quite separate to a lot of things and life itself sometimes as we're growing up. And, for us who might have been awake from a very young age, life didn't seem to fit. And society didn't seem to fit. The world didn't really fit. And so I remember feeling sort of alone-ish, not really lonely, but alone-ish. And that I felt like, even though I had all these people around me, it was like I didn't feel anyone really understood me. And so that also created a feeling of loneliness or separate too. But I just sort of felt this over the last few years has been quite relevant.
Yeah. I think I always had this sense of feeling okay so long as I was in nature. But being around other humans, I don't know that I didn't know what love was.
No.
It's like it's like I didn't know what that feeling would be. And you'd think I was in love or whatever, but really it was just that initial coming together. But to actually feel that is a whole different. It's just different.
It is
To,
different.
yeah.
And you're right with the nature thing. That was really the only place that I felt like I fitted somewhere.
Yeah.
That I was actually blending as one with. The others all felt separate. There was always a separation state somewhere in it, and expectation, all the things that go along with the human 3D.
Yeah. Or if I was in my own fantasy world, then I felt connected. But being with people and things that were expected of you or of me just didn't really fit what I wanted to do or where I wanted to place myself.
Yeah. Me too. And the communion with nature itself, in that sense, like I was thinking about how we, like I'd really love people to get on board here and tell us how they have got through these last 3 years. I want to sort of compartmentalize it into that, because there was so much that went on that has created so much grief, I think, for many. And the loneliness was a big part of that. I mean, not just the lockdowns, but the locking out from family, family who weren't on board with what your belief might have been and truth. There was family and friends that were sort of just shoving us, doors in our face, really, closing doors.
Absolutely. My sister's not spoken to me since the first lockdown. It's like because we were on such totally different pages.
Wow.
And it's and I had to share with her because I'd just arrived back here in Australia, and it seemed to be the best place for me to land. I'd only been back 2 weeks, so I'd not established myself anywhere, and yeah, my thoughts and her thoughts were so far apart. I couldn't really believe that we came from the same family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So I did spend a lot of time watching Netflix because
Yeah, we
I
did
didn't know
really.
what else to do with myself.
Yeah.
I'd left all my tribe back in New Zealand, and yeah, it was a very disconcerting feeling of
Yeah.
of separation.
Yeah.
Mm,
It definitely was. And such judgment, the judgment that came in, it wasn't loving, that is for sure.
no, not
Um,
at all.
and it really took me back to when I was only young, trying to hide all my clairvoyance and all my gifting and who I was in that,
Yeah,
I mean, that was who I was. It wasn't like I was trying to be something else. It was just there. That was it. I couldn't hide it really. And I thought I was hiding it until years later. And my friends all said to me, oh, yeah, what are you doing now? And I told them and they went, oh my God, that was so you, isn't it? And it was like, really? Did you actually see that in me then? Because I didn't think anyone had.
no,
And
I was the same.
yeah. So I felt, that coming into it and trying to live in so-called normal life as a teenager with all of that going on, I felt, there wasn't a lot of acceptance around mediums, clairvoyance in that time. There weren't a lot of them around. Now it's dime a dozen, and not just spiritual in the sense of medium clairvoyant, it was somebody who sees things differently to the rest of the world,
Yeah,
really, or seem like the
wow,
rest of the world. There's so many more now who are awake and see it our way, or not our way, but you know what I mean, in that
I do.
deeper
See,
state,
with a more of an
expanded.
expanded view
Yeah,
of the world.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I always felt like that. It's like I had a different view um, to how others, like even the beaching of the whales, say, just taking it for instance, and I was like, well, they use all that sonar and deep deep sea um, activity that
yeah,
really throws them off.
yeah.
I remember thinking that, like, I don't know, 20 years or more ago, actually, it's probably
Yes,
more than
yeah,
40, and and other people looking at me as if I was weird.
yeah,
Mm. But really, this inner knowing is, it's a gift, but sometimes it's a curse too.
it is. I remember many times thinking, God, I wish I could put the blindfold back on, you know,
Ditto.
and not see the world the way I see it now, because if it was easier when I was numb to it or blind to it and not actually looking at it.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, that wasn't ever the way that it was, because I always saw this other view. So it wasn't, and trying to, I suppose, merge it or make it make sense for me was hard. And it wasn't actually really until, I mean, I knew society wasn't the way that I would run society if it was me in the big seats, you
Yep.
know. Yeah, there wouldn't, I mean, if we self-govern, there's no need for, laws and armies and policing and, all these things. But that isn't how it is. So obviously that's where we're at. So for me, it wasn't until we had these last few years blow up that I really saw why I never fitted this system. I knew it, but that really sort of took it out and placed it right out here in front of me and went, it wasn't just because I thought it's a part of myself and trying to fit my identity as, having some Māori blood in me, and do I fit that scene, or what part of that culture comes through for me, and does it fit me, and who am I in that? And then there was my English Scottish stuff that was like, you know the white girl type of job, and where does that fit? How do I fit in that? And then there was this bigger picture though that kept showing up, like the banking system and the rules and regulations and the slots that we had to slot into, and be happy to do that, because if you didn't, you know, you were sort of punished or penalized for it. So it was like that all just never fitted. I couldn't fit myself. And I used to be a bit annoyed with myself for wanting to or being outside the square a bit, you know, and it was like, why can't you just get in the square and be there and stop, you know, because I felt like sometimes I was a bit of a mouthpiece, which I was at high school for sure. And you know, sort of protection mode I went into with a lot of the ones that couldn't speak up for themselves and were being picked on by you know, teachers. And it was out of it.
I was similar. It was those that were being bullied that I wanted to take under my wings and protect. And I guess that I was bullied as well because I had different views of the world. And and as you were talking, Mandy, you know, it's like all these separated parts of you. How do you fill that space when you feel like...
Exactly.
Yes, because I remember my daughter. So back in the day when I had absolutely not much awareness of a lot of things, so my husband is Maori, and the girls would go, well, I'm quarter caste. Well, I remember my youngest daughter, she was, I don't know, 5 or 6, and she's looking at her body, and she goes, so which quarter of me is Maori? Like she wanted to divide her body up into parts.
Yes.
So that's a separation, and it creates a loneliness all on its own.
It
How
does.
do you love all of you when you feel like all these bits are all over the place?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I know how much it used to sort of, you know, it's like we take the world view, we take the view of even, you know, the people around us or the community or the environment, and for me anyway, I was creating myself in what I believed they believed I should be. So it was on their image of me that I was creating myself. And that was hard because it wasn't who I was. And it wasn't the belief system that I was in at all, which wasn't clear in you know, early years. It wasn't exactly clear on what was what. But now looking back, I mean, gosh, I just know so much how I never fitted that system, that whole narrative. And then when these 3-year things sort of, when all this COVID stuff broke out and there was all that stuff going on, I felt shut out for sure. And it was very difficult to say anything, you know, as we know, for those who believed and you know, and it's all good. Whatever people did was okay. But for me, knowing what I knew and looking at the other data that came in, I knew what I felt was the truth for me was not what they were seeing. And they had no idea. A lot of these people had no idea what else was happening in this. And so for me, that was really difficult. And I found it very difficult to not be able to help somebody, not be able to sort of save them or rescue them, and stop them from harming. So, and being harmed, but that wasn't something that I could do. So I had to just, as we all tended to do, step back, shut down, and just sort of wait it out, really, because there was nothing much we could do. And in that created a lot of loneliness, segregation. You know, I started looking at myself even and feeling that I was being judgmental, I was getting angry, you know, it was bringing up a lot of old emotional stuff that came, and not a lot of love, you know. Until that point, I had been very loving and in that state, but that just shattered everything again and brought a lot of loneliness for sure.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, there was this, and I think I felt mine was even doubled, because there I am with my sister who thought I had gone crazy. Actually, she did. She told everybody I'd gotten crazy.
Yeah.
And separated from New Zealand, where I had a really strong base of loving people,
Yeah.
to being shut up. I couldn't even take myself to the shops.
Yeah.
I isolated myself so much. I'm like, I'm not putting a mask on. I am not going to be washing my hands with that horrible stuff that I'd used once before, and it just kills the hands and not doesn't kill a virus.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like I've spent the last 3 years pretty much not doing a lot,
Yeah.
because once you get used to not doing a lot, well, for me, I found the less I do, the less I actually want to do.
Yes.
I can stay in my loneliness rather than take myself out into the world.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm,
me too. I can too. And
yeah,
not that I feel lonely anymore. I don't. That's, and I hadn't up until that point, because when you are filled up with self,
yeah,
you don't actually feel lonely. I never do. But man, I did through that time. That threw me back into some very old stuff for sure.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
Tricky place to be, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It
Mm,
is for sure. Um, people used to say to me, how do we bring that love in? How do we get to the love? Because we are that love. We are love. That
yeah,
is what we are.
that's it.
And what we've learned to do is barricade and shut ourselves down, and we've really, um, barricaded our heart for sure from
Gridded it
all.
up.
Totally. We've
Mm,
imprisoned it to
yeah,
keep it safe.
yep,
And to try not to experience more pain and torturous terror stuff that we've been through in many, many lifetimes before. And so people used to say to me, how do we feel this love? How do we get this love here? Well, one of them is, because that's what I was thinking about in this conversation, was about how do we come back to, we might know all this loneliness stuff, and we know that there's, we've come through a point in time now where things are starting to move again and opening up, and we're all starting to create our life again the way we really want them to be now. And there's been a defining line drawn in the in the decision and the choice and the world. So now we're coming out of that space, which is lovely. And one of the things is absolutely about clearing the cellular, which we've talked about a lot, and how we both work in that area of helping and assisting others and holding space for them to go through and release and clear out their cellular program, which is great.
yeah,
But one of the things that, for me, I knew I had touched on the feeling of love. And I thought, like you said, we think we're in love. And then, 10 years down the track, we realize actually it was just we were getting our needs met.
yeah,
And there was a vibrational frequency match that was able to give us what we required and what we needed to heal from. So that was the program. And now it's like, and in that program, I used to say to people, because we don't really know, so only certain people might have really experienced real, true, unconditional love in their childhood and in their upbringing and in their world, which I don't know that many would have done that in this realm, have been in that absolute unconditional loving space. So none of us really know what that means and how that really felt, or what that really feels like, until we do experience and bring it through and experience in the body again. So one of the ways that for me I had to work with this was that, yes, clearing out all the cellular, which gave me a closer and more understanding for myself and who I am. So I would stay more connected to that rather than jump into the emotional human again, you know. So whenever I found myself running in the human emotional stuff and getting all dramaed in that, you know, and it was consuming me, I'd realize that I was more in my head now, and I've come into a space that's not in heart. I've come out of heart, I've gone into my head, and I'm now telling story. And the stories usually are not fun stories. They're usually stories that create a lot of, you know, dissonance in the body. We've got this story going on, this narrative of what if, and it's going to be really terrible. So therefore the body starts panicking, going into old feelings of terror, all those things.
Mm.
And so for me, it was like, well, when I go there, stop it and check. Is it actually something that's triggered some old, or is it still just you creating another story? And often it'd just be another story. And so more and more I connecting in that space of me, it started building, and I have always worked with light. So rather than tangibly trying to touch love, which we can feel, we know we feel it, you know, when we first have our firstborn baby, or the second even, or however many we might have, we can feel that feeling of that total unconditional love. We know that that's there. When they start taking on character and we start looking, hey, hang on a minute, and we're not in agreement with what they might be creating themselves into, we sort of, you know, drop a wee bit out of that space. And so we start having judgment and putting conditioning. And so it all starts getting mucked up again. But one of the things for me was always about light. And when I connected more to light and I fed my body with light, and it just would bring that love instantly, that feeling of oneness, this feeling of no separation, where you are not subjected to anything other than the joyous feeling of spacious beauty and bliss, and this absolute unconditional loving love. And once I started moving myself more into that space and connecting, it was so yummy. I just wanted to do it all the time, and I would do it all the time. And what that did was it started building within me. Yes, your light body starts activating more and more. It's not that it needs activating, but it is that it will start building stronger into this field here.
Mm. Yeah.
And when that was starting to happen for me, I could feel longer periods of this blissful, loving state. You know, so it just started lasting longer and longer and longer. And what happened was it built to a point where I had this amazing experience, which I've talked about before, about going to Nucleus. But what happened in that was that my body turned it around. So what I was doing was I was pulling in from out there and feeling the light and bringing the light and, you know, filling me up with this light. And then the light started moving itself through me, which then started activating it in me to come out. So instead of bringing it in anymore, it was purely coming from me and coming out. And that now has not switched back. It's still coming out of me. It's still now a toroidal energy that just continually keeps powerfully creating more of that. You know, it's a never-ending thing. Whereas before, up until that point, we're reliant on that energy coming in through us as our connection to the divine, our life force feeding us and energizing us. Whereas this now, you become your own power pack. You are the universe itself. And that there, when that switched for me, that was a very, very profound and awakening experience, and has never left me. And when I go back into that space, I am just Nucleus. I'm nothing more than conscious energy. And I realized from that how much we, you know, because we're sort of taught about looking outside of ourselves. You know, God lives out there, and we hear it all the time. And that I wasted years with that.
Yeah, I think mine was very similar. Was having a Reiki initiation, and this my heart just burst open. It was like this explosion in my heart that was never ending, And I always had this thing about looking out there. Like when I run workshops, I'm like, come back here, be present, be in your
Yes.
body. It's
Yes.
because your body is your major thing. It holds everything,
Yeah.
and it also holds all the light. I
Yeah.
think one of apart from the initial Reiki initiation that exploded my heart was another time when this beautiful woman put her hands on my head, and I didn't know that she'd even gone away, but I was floating in space with the earth in my belly, and
Mm.
it was just like, oh, so we are the earth, we are all of it, and it
Yes.
was just expanded my sense of self. So it was huge.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
wasn't just confined to my body, I was all of it.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful experience.
Yes, absolutely. And I
Mm,
think once you have some sort of an experience like that, whatever it might be, where you are taken into that quantum field of one, there is you can't forget it. It's nothing that you're going to forget. It's who you are, and you know that within every sense of you. It's
and you might go away from it for a minute, or as you said, just go, oh, it's enough, I'll just go put my blinkers on and go back to sleep.
mm,
But you really can't.
no, you can't, not at all.
No.
No.
It's like your mental might think that, but your body's like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, there was something else that was just popping in then. I'll just sit with that. But yeah, it's I think now
Flooded
it's
with love.
time. Pardon?
Being flooded with love.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful, it's a really beautiful experience.
Mm,
And I know being human, we can't hold on to that all the time.
no.
But you do get longer periods of it.
You do for
Mm,
sure. It's
mm,
lovely. And it reminds me all the time, when something might occur, what would I do? So my one of my daughters, had a bit of trouble with her partner, and they ended up he yeah, she ended up in A&E. And it was like I just wanted to go and smack him, you
yep,
know,
yep.
because it wasn't cool. What was going on wasn't cool. And I remember having to drive, was when I was over in Dargaville then, and I had to drive 45 minutes over to the hospital to pick her up in Whangarei. And I remember doing that, and I'm thinking, right, man, when I get there, and I was in, protective lioness mummy, protecting her car.
You were actually in love.
I
You
was in
were,
love,
yeah.
for sure.
Mm,
And I remember Spirit saying to me all the way over, just love him, love him. And I tell
mm,
you, they said that probably 3 or 4 times to me while I was driving over, and it started melting me. And I thought, my goodness me, exactly that. Just love him. He's not had that type of unconditional loving in his life. I don't need to judge him. I know his wounds.
yeah.
And just coming into that higher perspective of knowing that we all act out from our wounds, that we've had placed on us, or we've created, if we want to look at it like that. I know when I realized I created all my wounding and all the experiences I had that created the wounding, was like, oh my God, sicko. But it was how it
Repeat the
is.
pattern till we get it.
Exactly. So, it was, and that there changed him. When I didn't go over and battle up, and I sat in love with him, he couldn't understand why I was, and why did I even bother. And it was beautiful.
Yeah,
And, I just get reminded a lot about that, and different situations that I've gone into it the same way.
yeah,
And it's changed the whole outcome. It's changed the people involved as well. Mm.
yeah. I've been noticing that with my brothers. When I first came back, I was like, "What'd you get a jab for? What'd you do that for?" Blah blah. And
Yeah.
now I just sit And if something comes up, I'll answer the question, or I'll just put in something really gentle.
Yeah.
And the changes that I've been noticing is quite extreme, really. It's
Yeah.
actually they hear me rather than holding me out.
Yes.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
I think when you come in with rah, 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 nobody really hears you. They've
No.
gone back into their wounding. You've triggered their wounding in some way, so they can't hear what you're saying. But when you come with love,
Mm,
they can.
yeah.
It's like people hear you when you come from a loving space.
Yeah. They do. And I just was thinking too, about how we can be truly loved and yet feel so unloved, even if we've got a million people around us loving us, we can still feel unloved and lonely.
Yeah,
And I know, watching my mother pass away and with a terrible lymphoma cancer, and in that process, I was running over her life with me, and my life with her, and all of that, and I saw how much of a martyr she was, because she was, and she didn't let her body relax. So there were practical things she could have done that might have allowed her to live longer, but that wasn't her play out. But one of the things that I really came to see was that it did not matter how much we loved her. It just didn't matter.
right.
She didn't touch it, didn't touch her, because she did not love herself. She
Yeah,
was eating herself away with her own thoughts and feelings around whatever it might have been, her punishment of herself, whatever. I mean, I know now what the situation was before, but now it's, I see her actually just not feeling the love from us, not really
yeah.
feeling it, because she
Well,
didn't love
it's
herself.
yeah. Well, when we've got all those barricades up,
Yeah,
love can't get through. So
no.
it's like really gently trying to pull them down, and it's like gently pulling our own barricades down so
Mm,
that we can feel, because actually nobody else can do that for us.
no, no.
No. And it's our thoughts that keep creating the barricades. They
Mm,
keep putting them up. So
yeah.
it's like really, I think one of my biggest lessons was used to drive a school bus, and I'd have 20 minutes or sometimes longer before I picked up the first student. And in that time, I used to watch my thoughts. Well, seriously, sometimes my thoughts had whizzed off somewhere totally unrelated to me. And
Yeah.
I used to think that they were in control of me, but those 20 to 30 minutes in every morning was actually I'm in charge of those thoughts, and I would pull them back and
Right.
go,
Yes.
actually, that's not loving to myself, and just
Yes.
keep pulling my thoughts back. And I think I did that for a year or maybe more. I can't really remember now. It was a long time ago. But it really changed my appreciation of myself and the way that I am in charge of my thoughts.
Mm,
Nobody else out there, but nothing outside of me is in my thoughts. I'm in charge.
exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. And I know that was one of the last sort of, when the body's switching over, we're moving through and expanding into our higher being and all the rest of it, and the consciousness coming through. The mind is one of the last things that flicks, and we sit in that lower mental for quite a while, even though the physical started to really take on the higher frequencies. The
yeah.
mind can still jump into those
Oh,
places and
yeah.
take us back into those old stories and the feeling state, because as soon as we start telling the story, we've got a feeling that goes with it, and all that emotional stuff starts sort of rising again. And I know, and this is a great tool that Spirit gave me. Honestly, it was just amazing, and it worked really well. But when I was in that space of recognizing, after my light body had been activated, and it was like a few years of learning it, new things with it and all the rest of it. And I was getting frustrated because I kept going into old story, old narrative, and it was like, oh my God. And I got out on the back porch, and I'm sitting out there, me, annoyed as annoyed. And I'm like,
Tough
why?
lady.
why do I keep going there? And Spirit just so clearly said to me, because you have two operators in your computer room. And straight away, I had an image, which I work well with image. So for me, the image worked, and I saw the two people in the computer room, which was like a computer room, and I just sort of knew which one I wanted to take out the door and close the door and lock it behind him. They were two men, actually. It was funny, but these two, so this got this one out, and I'd be right for a while. I wouldn't go into the old story and the old feelings and all the rest of it. And then I'd be right for an hour, 2 hours a week sometimes. And then I'd realize he'd pick the lock, come back in. I'd have to go back to my little picture and take him back out again. But it worked really well. And the more I did that, the more I started realizing.
Longer periods of time that you have.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the old Indian saying, which wolf are you going to feed?
Yes.
One or the white one. Yeah. You get the choice.
You do. You absolutely do. And it's being aware, like not aware, but being mindful of when you're there and what you're doing, like all the time. And I now notice how much I don't chat away in my head anymore. I'm not having those conversations.
Yeah. I don't very often, unless I have it. If I've got something going on with, say, one of my family members, I might be chatting away, but I'm actually trying to find a solution for all of us.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm having a conversation, right, whatever. It's like, so how can I approach this so that we have the highest outcome?
Yeah. 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 They're good combos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a minute to get there.
It does.
It does.
Yeah, no, it does. But it's been...
They've triggered our old wounding.
Yeah.
But those conversations I have, otherwise I don't know how many conversations I have in my head anymore.
No, I don't have a lot. I find I'm in more silence now than I used to be, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. And it's lovely. It's peaceful, And I know when Dad was passing, and there were things that I had no control over. It was his journey. I had to come back to it's his journey. He's doing it the way he's got to do it, and all of that. But in those conversations, I knew I was invested because I was getting a headache. I was getting a heavy head, and I felt it was just too much. And it was like, just shut up now. Just get out of there and shut up and just be quiet again.
It's actually really draining on your body.
Totally draining.
Yeah. When you're off, it's sort of like you feel heavy and you feel, well, there's nothing you can do about it in your head either.
No. No. But you do have a choice. And I think it's just about being aware of when you're in there and where, when, like picking your battles, really. If you want to go into those sorts of conversations, well, then be ready to feel uncomfortable and shitty and all the rest of it. And if you aren't wanting to, then don't go there. If you're not wanting to feel like that. And that was something that really started working for me, was when something triggered me that might have brought up some of the old anger or me getting into that type of rant state, I did not like the body. I didn't like the way my body felt. I didn't like it. And it was like, oh my God, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't serve me.
Oh, look, when I first started this journey into healing my own triggers, because, I'm quite aware early, but it took me a long time to actually realise that I even had triggers. One of my teachers said the body holds all memory of all times and it never lies. And it's something that stuck with me. So when my body has a reaction, I know that is the truth.
Yeah.
That I cannot deny the truth of what my body holds.
Yes. Exactly. And instead of writing it out. Hi Tanya, love you too. Tanya's just joined us. And hi to Tony and Lisa and Linley and the other Tony. So welcome everyone. Yeah. It's I was just thinking about too, you know, and when I've been on my own, I'm saying 19 years, and it could be a little bit more than that now. I don't even know.
Lose track after a while.
You do, and this is completely on my own. No hookups anywhere, you know. People say they've been on their own, but they've actually had a few in between. I've had nothing. And what I came like, first of all, I wanted to do this because I realized how much time I was giving of myself to everyone else. Yeah. And it was like, I'm now wanting to give this time, give this love, give this energy and my attention to me more so. I mean, I still had kids around and things, so it was like I couldn't completely do that, but it was a choice right back then. And there would be many days where I'd be going, oh my God, I just need a hug, you know, something had happened, you know, life was still a bit dramery and things were going on, and you sort of feel like, you know, you want to just run to somebody to have a hug, or for them to support you, or to say a word that might just calm you, or whatever it might be. And I realized,
have your back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I realized in those moments how many times I went outside of me to get that comfort and to get that support and that awhi. And I realized how much I was needing it, how needy I was in it. And it wasn't a good look. I didn't like it. And I know that's a beautiful part of us. And it's not that I wanted to shuttle that off. It was looking at the needs. Why did I need to go to that person or have those people or whoever it might have been to give me a hug or to tell me something that I might have been able to just tell myself, whatever it was? Why did I need to do that? And underneath this, I feel like we as humans have this, you know, you saw the babies in Romania, wasn't it, where they'd been left and they were just put into cots, you know, all these orphan babies, and they were never touched. They were just given a bottle and fed, and they weren't ever given hugs and love. And they were very much in that space of rocking themselves, nurturing, trying to support and nurture themselves. And it was a terrible thing. And realize that those people, or anyone who has never had that type of nurturing, is stunted in their growth and their awareness, everything. And so we're tactile. We need to be touching. We need to feel. We need to have that nurture, and that it is part of us, and we do long for that. So in trying to get through the need, like, I'm open to it happening, and it happens in my life all the time. I'm so loved. So it's not that I needed to, even now, I don't need to have that show into me. I wanted to be able to show me how I did this for me, and not need it to come from out here to validate me as a person and how much I'm loved. I wanted to be able to love myself enough to know that I didn't need it to come from out there. Now it just flows in because I love me. But what I would do is I'd sit and process. And I think this is something that, if you've been sitting over these last 3 years, you know, we're talking mainly around that time, but forever, whatever lifespan you've had living in loneliness, living in feeling unloved, maybe, have a look at what your needs are in that. Have a look at what is it that you're needing from, you know, the people around you, from love. What is it you need from love? What is it you need from nurture? What is it that is really calling out, like an addictive needing, you know, that makes it sort of, it's not conditional. It's conditional, rather, it's not unconditional. So I wanted to cut all the ties to the conditioning. And that's what I've been doing over these 19 years, being on my own, is just absolutely bringing me back to me and how I can feel all this for me. I don't need it to come from out here, but of course it does, because once you do here, it's a continual flow.
Comes on in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was interesting going through all that and but just to be able to sit now in my own, knowing that I'm happy and at peace here.
Yeah.
And I do totally love myself.
Yeah. And I actually give thanks to the last relationship I ever had. I just thought, and that was like 3 months before I went to New Zealand. So I'm going, I don't even know how long ago that was, 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was the last relationship I had. And I was prepared to stay in WA for him. And I said to him one day, why don't you ask me to stay? And he goes, because sometimes your job is bigger than your humanness. And I think that, Mandy, that applies to you as well. And sometimes our role is bigger than just being human, because we've been part of the forerunners to helping others open.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that was how it happened for me.
Exactly. And I think too, like when I look back, the relationships I did have didn't like what this attracted to me, so it attracted a lot of people, and there was a jealousy from them. And so like they were trying to stop me from doing this, basically. And that was another big reason why I stepped out of relationships, because it was like, until somebody comes along that actually validates me and what I do and how I do it, and me as this, then I didn't want to know, because my husband had, took everything that I had in my spiritual realm, books, everything, numerology, papers, everything that I had, cards, all the cards, packs and packs of cards, and just made a bonfire out on the back lawn with it. So there was this really wanting me to not do this anymore. So, and we could look at it as the dark was trying to stop me, all that sort of thing. But whatever.
Really, it was his own patterning, really.
Exactly,
because that's actually why I left my husband, was because when I'd learnt Reiki, and I'm like giving him, I'm like, I'll show you what I've been learning. So I put my hands on. Anyway, the energy got to about here on him. He leapt up and he went, "You're white. What are you doing that? He was like, this is something, takes years of training. Who do you think you are?" And I think that was the beginning of the end. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But him really cutting down what my heart had just opened to was like a big slap in the face.
Yeah.
And and I've not. Look, I've had 2 very short relationships since then, but it's not been my journey.
No.
It's a strange thing where you end up going. I mean, I got married because I wanted to, because everybody else in the family was, and I wanted to fit into the same little box. I mean, my younger sisters are getting married. Excuse me, I'm the eldest.
Yeah.
It was anyway. So it's just looking for love, because there wasn't too much when I was growing up. Too many kids to be able to give love to everybody.
Yeah. I know. I used to think and get, like sit with it and process it, but I'd get quite upset around how I was always stopped from loving others. Because we all were barricaded in some way. We all had our boundaries and our barricades. Really, they weren't boundaries, they were big bloody walls. And you know, yeah, and I was always sad that I couldn't, people wouldn't let me love them the way I really, like I just wanted to love them. And yet
Yeah.
some people wouldn't accept that because they couldn't. And it was hard for me to see them suffering and needing or wanting to be loved and yet not allowing it to happen.
Oh,
It's sad.
you know what? It's just triggered in my thoughts is, um, we have become so PC. We're not allowing children to love others.
Mm,
It's like the stranger danger, all of the things that we've
yeah.
created. I mean, the 3 years of separation, but we were starting doing this separating people out well before that.
Oh,
This,
heck yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, yes, this stranger danger thing,
Mm,
and I do know that children are taken. I do know that.
yeah.
Trusting our children to know who it is that they can love is a big part of it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
had my eldest daughter, she just loved everybody
Mm,
except a few. And you would see her move
yes.
away from them. She
Yeah.
knew, she was so onto it as a little girl. And
Mm,
then well, actually, it was my sister um, going, oh, but what about stranger danger? What about someone who can hurt her? And I'm like, well, someone in the family could hurt her just as easily or more easily than somebody that's a stranger.
yeah.
And she has that innate knowing in her who it is she feels safe with.
Yes, absolutely. And
Mm,
they do. I've seen that lots with children. They know
yeah.
for sure. Um, one of the oh, I've just lost because I read a message. I was just going to say something, then I've lost it. Um,
I mean, phones.
oh, I know. And I'll read these comments in a moment, everyone. I'm going to get to them because there's some juicies. But one of the things that I really saw was with my youngest daughter, who's 25 now, and dropping her off at high school. And, there was the regular primary school stuff, bullying, all the stuff. But when they got to high school, it was like I was just blown away. And I remember sitting in my vehicle in the morning, watching these children, young people, high school now, so not children, but young people, going off to school for the day, greeting their friends, male and female, and hugging. And we never did that when we went to school. You
No,
barely touched
no,
a kid unless you
God.
punched them. It was like that was really all that was around in that time. And yet
Yeah. Oh,
these
yeah.
kids
No, we
here,
never hugged anybody.
no, they
Mm,
were heading off to school, and after school and I'd hear them, I love you, see ya, I love you. They were
yeah.
so loving. And I sat there, like I said, and cried, not just one
Yeah.
morning and not just one afternoon, but it touched me deeply because I just thought, oh my God, these kids are here to bring love to this planet. They really were here to love and open us to this more and more. And I see that so much. And I feel them in their anxiety because so many of them have that terrible anxiety. But now I see also how that has stopped them from living in that society that wasn't going to open to them. And so they've left that world. They left that world. They didn't even really touch into it. A lot of them, some did, but a lot didn't because of the anxiety. It kept them out of that structure. And they've been holding back for us for now to start creating into this new world of harmony and love. And I just can
Ah,
see this big plan now. It's like, oh my God, I get it. Because for so many years, that anxiety thing with them just really got me. It was like, why are they all so anxious and they just don't get out in the world? But they do it in their way, in their safe way with each other, but not in the way we did through life, if you get me.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been interesting watching that. And I've been so thankful to my kids because having the 17-year gap between my oldest and my next one, these two girls showed me that era, and then this
And
one's
then the
coming with
next
the
one.
new one, and then my
Yeah.
grandchildren are coming in. My oldest grandchild's 15, 16, and then he's shown me that era, And then now my little 2-year-old showing me this next lot, you know, so it's kept me up to date with all the
What's going
new
on
on the
in the
block.
world?
Yeah, it's great. I'll just read some of these comments here. Other than good morning and hi, ladies. Tony said, agree, negativity on top of negativity doesn't progress, but add positive into the negative and likely to have a more positive outcome compared to another negative response, which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And then Jan, hi Jan, says, I have connection within more often than conversations within. Let go of the old programs and blossom. Oh, bless on. Blessings in the lesson. Oh, bless on.
Yes.
That's good. Blessings in the lesson is that I am me and that I am love. Exactly. Waveney, thanks, Waveney. Wonderful sharing, Wise Wahine. So, yeah, it's beautiful. And, you know, we're bringing love back. This is the thing. And this is what these few years have come back to is yes, we might have had to barricade heart a bit. But what it did do is it gave us an inkling around what we still needed to work on, what was still sitting unresolved within us. And it was, for me, I see it was taking me right back into some really deep, old from the very first beginning in time, really. You know, it was creating, it was separating me and completing where that distortion in creation had started and where I was a part of that. Yeah. Either as a victim or as part of it, you know, who knows? But it was like that. I feel like it was both. And
we've all been both.
Totally. And that there was where I had to go back to release all of this here that's bringing me now out of that whole matrix and old system. Yeah. So I'd invite everyone to just go back into time really with yourselves and see where, you know, where you may still have or be feeling maybe that you need to condition your love with people, how and where also you may still have very deep wounding around bullies. Yeah.
Because disconnected yourself from love.
Yes.
We disconnect ourselves from love because it's scary.
It is, definitely. And I know, you know, in my marriage, like marrying my husband, who I love dearly and very unconditionally, is I just remember, I've lost that now. It's just gone straight away. My mind's doing that today. It's like there's a frequency going on out here. No, it's not going. I don't know where it went. That's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, lovely having a chat this morning.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Well, my early morning.
Yes, your early morning.
I'm awake now.
I did feel for you, Bev, having get up a little earlier.
Especially I'm not really an early bird.
No, I know. And I today...
I'll do anything to be here with you.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you so much for doing that too, because we love having you here. And it's like that though, energetically at the moment, It's like I've been sleeping, like it's very heightened energy for sure. So just take good care, everyone, and, you know, really keep your water up, which isn't what I'm doing. I'm telling you to do something I'm not at the moment, but
water's good.
It makes a big difference.
Especially if you drink coffee. If you drink coffee, drink more water.
Yes.
Unlike if I have a cup of coffee, I need to have a glass of water.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's definitely dehydrating me more and more.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
I've always found that with coffee. I've always had to drink more water when I drink coffee, and I don't only have the odd one now, not very often. Yes, very cool. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming online with us and joining our conversation again. And this happens every fortnight. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll do another live. And I also had to put in here too that Claudia sends her, I was meant to do that right at the beginning. Claudia sends her apologies. She couldn't make this panel today, so we look forward to her joining us next time.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Lots
See
of
you
love.
next time. Bye.
Yeah.